Well, the Supreme Court may have slapped Delphi murder case Judge Francis Gull on the wrist last week. But if this were a baseball game and she was the pitcher and Richard Allen was up to bat, he'd better be looking at a full count that has the judge winding up with what might just be a fastball. Stick around. Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil, and thanks so much for your support of us. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, share us with your friends, and please give us a thumbs up. Now, in baseball, a full count refers to a situation where there are 3 balls and 2 strikes on the batter. In this situation, the next pitch will define whether the batter takes a walk and makes their way to first base, or in other words, a place where Richard Allen might get some breathing room, or that he might get called in a strikeout where he hangs his head and faces a crowd. That crowd might be a jury, and it might be in a place that he didn't want it to happen. Well, Judge Gull is on the mound following a pretty tough week. That week, last week, where the Indiana Supreme Court publicly chastised her for removing the accused Delphi murderer's legal team. Well, the defense team is back in the dugout, but this is a brand new inning, folks, and the judge isn't showing any signs of backing down. In fact, today, in a brand new inning, she denied Richard Allen's motion for a Franks hearing, and I call that strike one. You see, a Franks hearing determines whether a police officer's affidavit, the statement that's used in obtaining a search warrant, a warrant that actually yields incriminating evidence, was based on false statements by the police officer. And the defense is alleging that there were things left out that shouldn't have been. The name comes from the case Franks versus Delaware, which affirmed the right of defendants to challenge a warrant, seizing their personal papers or effects or things that otherwise outline the case against them. In the Franks hearing, the defendant has to show that a false statement was knowingly and intentionally made, or that it was made with such a reckless disregard for the truth that it damaged the defendant. Now, it can't just be an allegation. It has to have more to it than a conclusion. It has to be backed up by a detailed offer of proof. They've got to show something to really back it up. Now, in addition to that, Richard Allen would have had to have shown that the false information was essential in order to get the affidavit. In other words, that they had to lie or leave things out on purpose in order to get the affidavit. Well, in Gull's ruling, she came out and she said very clearly that the court found the affidavit to be submitted in support of the issuance of the search warrant, and that it, yes, did contain information that was reasonable and made a reasonable person believe that evidence existed in the murders, and that evidence would be found in the defendant's home and vehicles. The judge went on to say that the court does not find that the affidavit submitted had false statements, or that the affiant, the police officer, omitted statements with a reckless disregard. Also, that the court found that the affiant did nothing to suggest that they intended to mislead the judge by failing to present information. In fact, the court went on and said they found that the affidavit issuance of the search warrant was valid, that the search itself was reasonable, and it was legal under Indiana law and the Fourth Amendment. So, she ruled 100% in favor of the prosecution, and it was a solid strike against Richard Allen. Now, Judge Gull clearly didn't think the defense satisfied the 2-part requirement. Thus, in my opinion, Richard Allen earned a strike from a very speedy fastball. Now, as Allen prepared for his next swing at bat, Judge Gull came out again, and this time with a curve he didn't expect, denied his motion to suppress the ballistics. Those ballistics that placed the weapon they seized in his home with the unspent round that was found next to the victims at the murder scene. Now, this procedure is called a motion to suppress in limine. I've heard people say it a bunch of different ways, but I believe it's limine, folks. And this is strike 2 for Richard Allen. A motion in limine is a pretrial motion where the defense, in Richard Allen's case, are trying to exclude evidence from coming into trial. They do not want that unspent bullet and the comparison that's going to come out about that to come up in court. Remember, that bullet has now been compared forensically. Even though it wasn't fired in the weapon, it was cycled through, and the state is alleging they have marks and effects on the weapon that suggest it was in that gun found in Richard Allen's home. Regardless of the motion to suppress, the judge said the defendant's motion to suppress fruits of the search of his home is denied. Based on all the pleadings, the memorandums, the exhibits, everything submitted, she's denying the request for a Franks hearing. Now, in her denial of the motion regarding the ballistic evidence, Gull said that the defendant's motion in limine regarding the ballistics is reviewed and denied without hearing. She's not even going to hear it. The court finds the evidence contained in the defendant's exhibits are relevant and admissible. The court further finds the probative value of the evidence is not substantially outweighed by the prejudicial impact, and that the evidence will not confuse or mislead a jury. The judge said, we're going to keep it in. So in my baseball terminology, Richard Allen might have earned a couple of balls during the Supreme Court hearing last week, but he's got 2 solid strikes in the hearing today.
We have new developments to report tonight here at 6 o'clock in the Delphi Murders case.
Yeah, the judge issuing some key rulings against defendant Richard Allen. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel is in studio for us.
And Bob, I understand this now will let the state show the jury some of the most important evidence that it has against the defendant, Richard Allen.
Yeah, and Richard Allen's attorneys asked for a special hearing because they claim law enforcement lied to get a search warrant of Allen's home. Today, Judge Frances Gull shot down that idea, and she said she won't even have a hearing on that. It could have a huge impact on this case. Court documents say investigators found important evidence against Richard Allen at the crime scene, an unspent bullet found between the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German. Investigators claim ballistics testing on that bullet matches a gun they found inside Allen's home when they conducted a search warrant. And it's some of the most powerful evidence offered by the state in an effort to link Richard Allen to the crime scene. But Allen's attorneys say the Carroll County Sheriff lied in order to get the search warrant, and therefore all the evidence should be suppressed. Monday afternoon, Judge Fran Gull disagreed. She denied the defense team's request for a hearing to determine whether the sheriff lied and whether the evidence should be tossed out. Gull said the affidavit the sheriff filed to search Richard Allen's home and car was reasonable. And in her ruling, she said the court does not find that the sheriff submitted false statements or omitted statements with reckless disregard, nor does the court find that the sheriff intended to mislead the judge by failing to present information. So, a jury will get to hear about the gun found inside Allen's house and how it might relate to the crime scene. Also this afternoon, the judge announced she will consider a new request to transfer Allen to a county jail instead of a state prison. She will set a hearing date for that and another hearing to decide whether to let the prosecutor add additional charges against Richard Allen.
But let's talk about those balls quickly. The first ball came when the Supreme Court agreed to hear Richard Allen's argument without requiring him to go back through the appellate process. Now, ball 2 came when the court ruled that Richard Allen's dismissed legal team could return to the dugout and continue playing ball. In other words, the judge erred and they sent the legal team back to help Richard Allen in his defense. That third ball came with the inference that Judge Gull acted inappropriately. The court was pretty clear about that, and I think it set the defense up for a possibility of an appeal down the road. Now, we're looking at this final pitch of the inning, and the judge said she's taking under advisement Allen's motion to transfer while setting a hearing for the state to amend the information. So my question is this going to be strike 3 for Richard Allen, who's then going to have to face a jury, or is the umpire ultimately going to yell ball and walk the guy, giving him a little more breathing room? Well, folks, these are my thoughts as I watch this case continue to unfold. And I really want to know what your thoughts are, especially with the rulings that came down today. I hope that you'll put your answers down below and know that I'm going to be reading them. And please be kind to each other as you respond back and forth. And if you didn't catch my live this weekend as I stayed at the home of convicted cult leader Warren Jeffs the other night, please make sure you go back and check it out. Creepy would be an understatement. Remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And please make sure you're checking out our audio podcasts. You can find them on your favorite podcast platform. And make sure you're checking profilingevil.com on the web. It's a place where you can catch up on all the latest things we're talking about, plus sign up for our digital newsletter, the Bolo. It's the only way you're going to get the Bolo. You have to sign up in order to get it. And know that we're never going to share your information with anybody else. Now, don't miss choir practice, folks.
Hey everybody, look who I'm hanging out with. And listen, I'm not attending choir practice, but I just wanted to tell you that you need to be watching Profiling Evil YouTube. Don't miss it. I'm telling you, there's something there for you every single time. I never miss. You shouldn't either.
You're going to love choir practice. In February, I'm going to be joined by a police officer who's working Skid Row. He's going to share what choir practice means to him. And I'm also going to be chatting with my buddy FBI profiler and author Mark Safrick. So make sure you join us. And folks, we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.